We're now in Mishna Zevachim, Perek Yud Daled, Mishna Hey, the second in the series of Mishnayot, which tells us when Bnei Yisrael were allowed to offer korbanot on bamot being personal mizbechot that they could construct in their own homes or in their towns, and when they had to rely on the mizbeach in the Mishkan or later in the Beit HaMikdash. So the Mishnah begins, Ba'u leGilgal v'hutru habamot. So when Bnei Yisrael came to Gilgal, and you see right there is Gilgal. This is basically the town Bnei Yisrael first come to when they cross the Yarden at the time of Yehoshua. And you see it located just above Gilgal is Yericho, and then Ai, the two first towns or cities that Bnei Yisrael fought against once they started their battles to conquer the land. You see Yerushalayim is slightly to the south. So Ba'u leGilgal basically means when Bnei Yisrael crossed the Yarden at the time of Yehoshua. Once they enter the land, hutru habamot. Hutru from the word mutar. Mutar being permitted or allowed. Whereas in the Midbar, Bnei Yisrael were not allowed to have their own personal mizbechot. They had to rely on the Beit HaMikdash, or on the Mishkan rather. Now that they're living more spread out, and you see there's Yehuda, there's Shimon, Ephraim, Menashe, all the way up to the tribes in the north, Naphtali, Asher, Dan, and they're living far away from the Mishkan. So at this point, Hashem says, at least for the early going, they are allowed to offer korbanot in private without going all the way to the Mishkan. That will become a problem later on. We will get to that. But for now, once they get to Gilgal, bamot are permitted. Now, there are rules for which korbanot can and can't be offered on a bama. So the Mishnah continues, Kadshei kadashim ne'achalim lifnim min haklaim. And here we see the different types of korbanot specifically divided into Kadshei kadashim and Kadshei kalim. The Kadshei kadashim, the holier korbanot, are the ones with the peach background, and the Kadshei kalim, the less holy korbanot, are the ones with the light blue background. We see Kadshei Kadashim includes all of the Korbanot Ola, all of the Korbanot Chatat, all of the Korbanot Asham, and one type of Korban Shlamim. The Korban Shtei Alechem and Shavuot was a Kadshei Kadshim, a holier Korban. The Korban Shtei Alechem and Shavuot is the only Shlamim that's Kadshei Kadshim. It's called Zivchei Shalmei Tzibur elsewhere. All the other korbanot shlamim you see in light blue are kadshei kalim, right? And not only are they kadshei kalim, are they lighter, less holy korbanot, they're all brought by individuals. Korban Shtei Alechem, which celebrates the first bringing of wheat on Shavuot, included Shtei Alechem, 2 loaves of bread from that wheat, also included a korban ola. It included a korban chatat, and it included 2 sheep that were brought as a korban shlamim. So anything that is here in peach was kadshei kadshim, holier korbanot, and could only be eaten near the Mishkan. And we'll see in the last part of the Mishnah, anything that is kadshei kalim, we have less restrictive rules about where it can be eaten. Lifnim min haklaim, of course, means within the curtains of the Mishkan, not of the Mishkan itself, but the curtains that formed the courtyard that surrounded the Mishkan. Here you see these white linen curtains in this model. And any of the Kadshei Kadashim, the holier korbanot that were brought, if the meat could be eaten, which means any korban chatat, or korban asham, or the 2 sheep of the korban Shtei Alechem, the 2 sheep that were the shlamim. Of course, korban ola, all of it was burned to Hashem, and it was not eaten. But any of the other korbanot, where the Kohanim had a share in eating it, their meat could only be eaten lifnim min haklaim, inside the curtains of the Mishkan, of the courtyard surrounding the Mishkan. And that phrase, lifnim min haklaim, is basically code for in the courtyard of the Mishkan, because we will see later on, it gets used to mean the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash, when there's not curtains, but there's walls. But the Mishnah latches onto that phrase, and very typical for a Mishnah, which likes to be very repetitive. So you get into a good rhythm. Remember, Mishnah was always done ba'al peh originally, so it's good to get into a rhythm. So here it will be lifnim min haklaim, will be a phrase that keeps recurring even when it's no longer curtains, but it's actually walls. And finally, the Mishnah tells us kodashim kalim bechol makom. Those were the rest of the korbanot shlamim, the korbanot of lighter kedusha, right? Could be eaten anywhere. Anywhere means throughout the land, which makes perfect sense. If you're going to allow bamot, if you're going to allow a Jew living all the way up here in Naphtali, or in Asher, or in Dan, to bring a korban on a bama, it makes sense that he can eat the meat right where it was brought, and not have to schlep down all the way to Gilgal in order to eat the korban that we just allowed him to bring much, much further away from the place of the Beit HaMikdash, or from, at this point, from the Mishkan.